Don't give up the fight. Make sure you let them know that you're determined to make this happen. You got to go get them. Make them embarrassed. Get them embarrassed. Make them feel strong. Get up there. Let's go. Let's make them fight.
At 73 years old, Congressman Tony Coelho was still urging people to keep fighting for disability rights. Not quietly, not someday, but now. For most of American history, disability wasn't treated as a civil rights issue. It was treated as a personal problem. Buildings were built without ramps. Public transportation was inaccessible. Employers could legally refuse to hire someone simply because they had a disability. Exclusion wasn't unusual. It was normal. The Americans with Disabilities Act didn't happen because society suddenly became more compassionate. It happened because people pushed for change. Because when revolution creates pressure, government is forced to react. And sometimes that reaction becomes reform. In my personal interview with Tony Coelho, he told me how everything really started for him as a teenager, after a farm accident and his epilepsy diagnosis changed his life.
When I was about 16 years old, I was on the family's dairy farm and in a pickup truck, and it flipped over in the canal. I hit my head. A year later, I'm in the barn milking, and the thing I knew, I woke up in bed in the house.
He shared that his family didn't understand epilepsy at the time. They even took him to witch doctors, hoping for answers. It shows just how misunderstood disability was.
My parents, they believed that if you have epilepsy, you were possessed by the devil.
And when he got older, that misunderstanding turned into discrimination. He told me he couldn't even get a job interview, not one. But instead of letting that stop him, it pushed him to fight back.
In those days, the word epilepsy was on every job application. I filled out, I don't know how many applications, and I never even got an interview, not one.
What started as something personal didn't stay personal. It became a reason to change the system. By the 1970s and 1980s, disability activists across the United States were organizing for change. Across the country, people with disabilities were challenging barriers that had existed for generations.
I basically feel that if I have to feel thankful about an accessible bathroom, when am I ever going to be equal in the community?
Experiences like these fueled a growing disability rights movement. Accessibility wasn't charity, it was a civil right. One of the most important figures helping build national momentum was Justin Dart. In my interview, Tony Coelho talked about how Justin Dart traveled across the country, listening to people with disabilities and bringing their stories together into something bigger.
Justin Dart went in a van all around the country and met with people with disabilities everywhere. In effect, developed a groundswell of support and activism on the part of those of us with disabilities.
Across the country, thousands of people began sharing their stories and demanding change. Those stories turned frustration into action, and that action was becoming a national movement. While activists pushed for change outside government, leaders inside Congress were working to turn that pressure into law. One of the strongest voices inside Congress was Congressman Tony Coelho. Alongside allies like Senator Tom Harkin, lawmakers began pushing for major civil rights protections for Americans with disabilities.
It is time that our government recognize our abilities and give us the dignity to do what we can do.
People should be judged on the basis of their abilities and not on the basis of their disabilities.
Momentum was building, but passing a law wouldn't be easy. And outside of Congress, activists were about to make sure the country could not ignore this any longer.
I'll take on life! I have to!
In March of 1990, disability rights activists staged one of the most powerful protests in civil rights history, the Capitol Crawl. Dozens of demonstrators left their wheelchairs at the bottom of the Capitol steps and began pulling themselves upward. Each step represented a barrier they faced every day. For many Americans watching, it was the first time they truly saw those barriers.
I got out of my wheelchair and I started climbing. I knew at that moment that I was not only representing myself, but I was representing my generation.
The protest quickly drew national attention. Cameras captured activists climbing the steps of the United States Capitol, the same place where lawmakers were debating their rights.
They say that it was the image of me climbing those steps that, was the final decision to get the ADA passed.
As lawmakers arrived, they had to step around the protesters. They couldn't ignore it. Revolution outside the building was forcing reaction inside it.
We must remove the physical barriers we have created.
On July 26, 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act became law. For the first time in U.S. history, discrimination against people with disabilities was officially recognized as a civil rights violation. The law required equal access to jobs, transportation, public spaces, and government services.
Today, Congress opens the doors to all Americans with disabilities. That today we say no to fear, that we say no to ignorance, and that we say no to prejudice. This is your bill, and you earned it.
This law wasn't just passed, it was fought for.
We were being seen, people with disabilities had a voice.
After the ADA, everyday life began to change. Curb cuts appeared in sidewalks. Buses added lifts and ramps. Buildings became accessible. For the first time, millions of Americans with disabilities could participate more fully in public life.
There was nothing to make life easier. I think a lot of places now understand they've got to do something.
We are people too, and we should be able to get into any building, go to any store.
Things that once felt impossible started becoming normal.
You can pace a law, but until you change society's attitude, that law won't mean much.
The ADA changed accessibility in the United States. But the fight didn't end in 1990. Barriers still exist. Access is still debated. And laws like the ADA still need to be protected.
If you give me the right to fail, then I have an opportunity to succeed.
The ADA created opportunities that did not exist before. But what happens next depends on whether people keep pushing forward.
Be proud of yourself. Love yourself. If you love yourself, you then will be successful. Don't let people knock you down.
The Americans with Disabilities Act didn't happen because change was easy. It happened because people demanded it. Revolution created pressure. Reaction forced the government to respond. Reform turned that pressure into law. But progress doesn't stop with one law. It changes every time someone speaks up, challenges a barrier, or demands equality. The activists who climbed the steps of the Capitol didn't do it for the history books. They did it so future generations would keep climbing.
In the disability rights movement had been the streams of constant change. For the worse, for the better, in flux it had remained. But to move it with decision toward human dignity, we gathered as one, there was work to be done, for we held only part of the key. ADA, we stand as one to see it through.